One of the other aspects of multiple step jobs is the use of the condition parameter on the execute statement. In this particular situation, you can see that we have a condition parameter and we can refer back to a previous step name or proc step name if we need to identify a particular step that we want to test the condition code for. Now the condition code is set by the program upon completion. And so as a result, based on that condition code test, we can use a single test or we can test for multiple steps in order to determine whether or not the step itself in question should run. So what we have then is that we have the specific tests that we can do, and we have an option that says even or only. Now even and only refers to execution during abnormal termination. So when we are testing for the previous steps, we are testing condition codes. When we specify even or only, we are looking for abnormal terminations, some abend code that caused the step to terminate prematurely. In those cases then, what the even means is we will run this step even if a previous step had abended, or we will run this step only if a previous step had abended. Otherwise, the condition code test basically says that if the condition is true, then we will bypass the step in question. So what we have then is that the condition code, as we said, is set by the program when the step completes. Every program must set a condition code in order to be able to have a valid value. 0 indicates successful completion. A 4 typically indicates a warning, which means that it was successful, but there could be conditions there that warrant some scrutiny. An 8 indicates it's a conditional. And conditional means that there was an error detected, but it may or may not make any difference with respect to the outcome or the output that you have. And then a 12 indicates that there was an error indicated, and as a result the step did not complete successfully. And then a 16 or higher is considered a catastrophic type of error. Catastrophic in this case here is probably a bit melodramatic, but what it means then is that the error was so severe that the program had no choice except to just terminate because the request could not be fulfilled at all. In other words, the request was simply impossible to complete. So as a result, normally catastrophic type of errors are very, very rare. But when they occur, usually one of the difficulties is that you have virtually no diagnostic data because something is so severely wrong that the program can't even figure out what to do about it. So this is one of the conditions that you can in fact check. Now most of the time condition code testing is going to be interested in the condition codes of an 8 or a 4 in order to be able to establish whether or not it should run and that there's a reasonable expectation that things are going to work. So these conditions, as we said, are not abnormal terminations. These are set by the program. In other words, the step completed execution and the program determined whether or not errors had occurred based on its assessment of what it was supposed to do. An abnormal termination means that the program could not complete execution and the system in fact terminated the step. In those situations, you will have specific messages indicating that an abnormal end occurred. You will have a system code that is associated with that, and then that system code can be looked up to see what the nature of the problem is that gave rise to that particular situation. So basically then, the table that we have here for condition code settings, in this example here, when we say that 8 is equal to a previous step's completion code, what we are asking then is that we are saying that if the previous step had a condition code of 0, then when we read that, we'll say 8 is equal to 0. Well, that's false, so that means we would execute the step. 8 equal 4, that's a false statement, so we would execute the step. 8 is equal to 8, that's a true statement, so we would bypass the step. And then, of course, 8 equals 12 is also false, and that means we would execute the step. So it's very important when you're trying to interpret these values that you understand what exactly is being asked here. So it can sometimes seem confusing because of the fact that we're referring to a previous step name, and you may read something like 8 is equal to step 1, and then you're wondering, well, what exactly is the interpretation of that? And so your best bet is to simply take the value that you would have had from step 1, put it into the statement, and say, is that statement true or is it false? If it's true, we will bypass execution of this particular step. And you can see some of the other operators that are available here, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, and so on. And so we could use those then as various tests for the particular completion codes that we have. So let's take a look now at this assemble, link, and go procedure again and see what the condition code settings are that are present in that particular proc. Because in this case here, what we would have is we would have condition code settings that say that if there's an assembly error, in other words, the program has a syntax check in it, then there's no point in going ahead and executing the other steps. And as a result, those steps will be bypassed if we have a return code or a condition code that indicates that we had a problem. So let's take a look at what that looks like. In this particular example, this assembly, link, and go ran successfully. So let's scroll through the JCL so that we can see what we've gotten. And you can see the JCL here with the overrides. And when we look here, you can see at the very bottom, we have a condition code 0 for step C. And then we have a condition code 0 for step L. And then when we go to step G, we have a condition code 0 here as well. And this indicates that all 3 steps ran successfully, and so as a result, we've got a clean assembly, we've got a good link, and the execution itself ran successfully. Return code 0s on everything. Now, I went and made a change in the program so that we would get an error in the assembly so that we could see what that looks like. And in this particular case now, what we would have is that when we look at this, again, we scroll through the JCL, and now in this case, you'll notice that we have a condition code 8 coming out of the C step. Now, when we look at this, you'll notice that as we scroll down, you'll see that the link step ran with a return code 0, but the go step was not run because of condition codes. And that's because on the execute statement, the condition that was being tested for here indicated that we did not want to run this step if we had a return code of 8 coming out of that assembly step. So again, in this particular case here, what we are looking at then is we are looking at the results of these return codes. Now, in this particular instance, we can take a look and see what is coded on these various execute statements so that we can see what the condition code test is. In statement 10, which is our link, we have a condition test there that says 8 is less than C. Now in this particular case, since the condition code in step C was an 8, 8 is less than C, which is an 8, is a false statement. And as a result, this step will execute. In the go step, we have 2 conditions being tested. 4 is less than C, and 8 is less than L. Now in this case here, again, L was a 0, so 8 is less than L as a 0. That's a false statement. So that would indicate that it should run. However, the previous condition code test indicates 4 is less than 8, which is a true statement, and as a result, this step would be bypassed, which is exactly what we saw occur. In addition, in this step right here, we have an abnormal termination during execution. And when we look at this one, we can see what I meant about an abnormal termination. We can see a system completion code here of 0C4, and this indicates that the step was abnormally terminated before it could complete. So when we go through and look at this, we can see that we have our condition code set for step C. We have a condition code set for step L, but when we come to step G, we find that the step was not completed. Instead, we get a system completion code of 0C4 indicating an abnormal termination. The step did not complete, and as a result, we would look up this code to find out what the particular failure was and what we might do to remedy that.